So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. I hope we learn. I really look forward to getting some refresher and some new tips from today's topic. So today's topic is putting together a scientific research manuscript addressing the hows. How could I improve all those different hows? We hope we give you some kind of leverage or something that you can use when you are drafting your manuscript for publication. And we specifically use the word manuscript here because before something is published, it's called a manuscript. Then it only becomes an article or a book chapter after it has been published. So today's presenter is Dr. Samuel Bansah. He is originally from Ghana, and actually we met in 2017, I think, at a conference in the States. So that's how, when you go to a conference, please make some contacts so that you can somehow work together in the future. He worked as a lecturer at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana, and then worked as a hydrogeologist in Neumont. And later on, he went on to study at in the United States in Illinois State University, where he got his master's in hydrogeology, and later moved to Canada at the University of Manitoba, and for getting his PhD in water resources engineering. And after that, he worked as a provincial water supply and regulatory agency of the town. He's going to remind us how to say this town. I'm not about to break the name of the town. And also currently he worked in that town again at the Polytechnic in that town as an instructor in water resource engineering. So Sam, please go ahead. It's your chance now.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you, Josephine. Thanks everybody for joining us wherever you are in the world. I think there are people joining us from North America, North and West Africa, and of course Namibia. I actually spoke to Joe about what our audience actually look like, and I mean, she gave me a preview of what the audience are: early career people, grad students, and of course some undergrad students. So this presentation is going to help a bit. It's just my own ideas. It's about writing, right? We all have levels of discomfort when it comes to writing. So I just hope we can go through this presentation. And if there are any questions, we can share our ideas and get to that level of comfort when it comes to writing. So I only have some few slides, and we'll probably leave the rest of the time for questions if there are any. Oh, now. Okay, I want to issue this disclaimer that the contents in this presentation are not intended to replace any standard writing protocols you may have been exposed to. They are solely designed to serve as potential alternative to other modes of writing protocols you may be using. This presentation is based solely on my experience and observations after many years of publishing, reviewing manuscripts, and supervising students. So I just want to state that you should carefully evaluate the suggested method and decide whether this is going to help you prior to adopting these methods. I want to acknowledge the land. This presentation is coming from one of the satellite offices of Saskatchewan Polytechnic, located in Moose Jaw, Canada. And I want to acknowledge the land, that this presentation is coming to you from the Saskatchewan Polytechnic Moose Jaw campus. Saskatchewan Polytechnic campus operates in Treaty 4 and Treaty 6 territories and traditional homelands of the Métis people. Now here we are in grad school, or we are in school, especially graduate school, right? And then you meet your advisor. The things that you discuss in the first meeting center around what research teams. So research teams are the broad teams, right? And then from which you narrow down these themes into research topics, and then you come out with your research objectives. This process holds for whether you are writing a sandwich thesis or a monograph. Even an honest thesis, students at the bachelor's level will go through this process. So the whole aim is to get a compact document that could be used for something later. And in this case, our idea as grad students or early career researchers is to produce an article. So you have the themes, you have the topics, and then the hard work begins. So how do you get good research objectives? How do you define good research objectives? So this is a very important step that requires a lot of reading. You need to spend time and read a lot. You have to consume large amounts of published materials, because when you're going through this process in identifying the research objectives, you are informed by research gaps, right? What has been done? What is in literature? What is there to add to the literature? What is not well done? Is there something unique that nobody is looking at? These are the questions that inform you when you are looking for research gaps. You want to see the gaps in research. That is going to help you define very good research objectives. You don't just get up, take a piece of paper and start jotting down some research objectives. You need to consume a lot of materials. You need to spend time and read a lot of literature to come up with very good research objectives. Now let's look at an example. As an example, we have here a research team in a broader sense, water storage and release dynamics in watersheds. And then the topic that we can get from it is catchment transit times and water age. Okay, so that's our topic, catchment transit times and water age. Where do we start from? How do we approach this? People struggle with where to get materials from. What do I read? Where do I start from? These are all questions that come to us, right? My suggestion is to start with a very good review paper. Come out with a couple of review papers, 1, 2, 3. Those good review papers are going to capture a lot of the things that you need when it comes to the references. This is an example. Our research team is there. Our research topic is catchment transit times and water age. So I go in there and I look at this good review paper. How old is stream water? Open question in catchment transit time conceptualization, modeling, and analysis. So this is a very good review paper published in hydrological processes. So it is from this review paper that you come out with your reference list. So at the end of this review paper, you see the reference list over there, right? A very good review paper will capture a lot of the references that you need to be focused on in acquiring the research objectives you want. So from that review paper, you go to the reference list, and that reference list is going to capture most of the key references that you need for your project work. And I'll also suggest that at this point, as you read all of these materials, start building your reference list from there. I'll suggest EndNote Web from the Web of Science, right? You are building your bibliography. You read this paper. Most of the time, people finish writing or they write to some points and they're looking for references. Where did I read this from? Where is this paper? And they can't get the references that they had visited prior to where they are at this point. So as you read these papers, start building up your reference list. Put them in a reference list. Be adding them bit by bit as you you define your objectives and you read these many papers. I will recommend EndNote Web. EndNote Web from the Web of Science is where I store my references. From grad school up to now, I have all my references stored there by topic. So I can just log into the web and then I have all my references and I can format them in whatever form I want them to be. So now you have identified good research objectives. They are solid, you know, they have novelty, and now you go on to the next step. The next step I'll suggest, we all know, is data processing. Now you need your data, right? As you are doing the trying to define your research objectives, you are also probably doing your field work, lab work, or data mining. Some people prefer only data mining. You can only mine data where you get data from existing materials. People prefer that. So you have your data ready, and then you go on to the data analysis stage. Is the data analysis stage that you prepare your tables and figures, right? This stage is also very important, especially the data analysis. At this point too, you have read through literature. You have read a lot already. You have identified gaps and methods that people are using. This is also another stage where you have to try and strive to achieve some kind of novelty, right? So go on, be innovative enough. Try and find innovative equations, functions, and models. That is going to add to your novelty. You want to be as unique as possible. You want somebody to read your work and find that, oh, okay, there is something cool here. This guy did something that nobody thought about, right? So data analysis also comes with that. It also takes time. Don't just take your Excel, plot some trend lines, what everybody is doing. That is okay to some extent, but you need to go further. You need to push yourself a bit further. So now you have your figures done, your tables are done, but these figures that we use, we prepare, most of the time are not well polished. They are not well polished. So I will encourage you to improve your image quality. Try and improve your PowerPoint, Photoshop, Illustrator, and other subsidiary software skills. You need to move these figures onto PowerPoint, Photoshop, Illustrator, these subsidiary softwares to clean them up. You want things to look clean. You want things to look sharp. When people see, they shouldn't be or figuring out this is not clear, this is not legible. You want to avoid all of that. So once all your figures are hot, clean, your tables are nicely made, what I'll suggest you do is what I do is that I move each of the figure onto Word. So each final figure and table, I move it to Word, and then I write detailed description of what the figure is revealing. Detailed description. So each figure comes to Word, and then what is this figure telling me about the system I'm studying? Detailed. Very, very detailed. And I have half a page up to a page of notes, very descriptive notes that is going to guide me on the path later. And as you do this, you have to give your figures appropriate figure captions. Your figures and tables must come with appropriate captions. So caption your figures and tables appropriately. Let's look at an example. This example is a figure that's showing a watershed, right? It has an input tracer, which is a water tracer. Precipitation is going through a watershed, and then the output is in the stream. And then on the right-hand side of the watershed, we have the input tracer concentration, the time series of the input tracer concentration, and then it's filtered through a transit time distribution, and then we have the output tracer concentration in the stream. This is a very simple figure, very simple model. But let's look at the figure caption. Try and capture your figure captions well. Let me move, give me a minute. Let me move this here. Okay. So let's look at this figure caption. Let's look at this figure caption. So this is the figure caption. Figure 1, schematics illustrating that spatially distributed inputs received by a catchment travel along heterogeneous flow paths to the catchment outlet. The diagram shows how a conservative tracer input to a catchment will be filtered as the water passes through the system to the catchment outlet, yielding a damped and lagged signal with less high frequency variation. The transit time distribution shows the filtering process. You see how detailed this figure caption is. You need your figure captions to be detailed. Don't write something like this. Input, output, and filtering process. We see a lot of figure captions like that. Table captions, figure captions, just simple, not revealing anything. You want to avoid this. So you have all your figures moved to Word with detailed descriptive notes. Good figure and table captions, right? All of these little descriptive notes for each figure and table is going to serve as the concept notes for writing the results section of your manuscript later on. So now you have your figures done, you have your tables done, you have all these many pages of Word documents with the descriptive notes and everything is in there. It is now time for you to write. This is the writing stage. I prefer a writing retreat. I retreat to write. We all write differently, right? Some people write early in the morning when the energy level is at the highest and you have the quietest time. Some write in the evening. It depends on you. We are all different. I prefer setting aside days that I'm not so busy, continuous days, 4, 5, 6, up to a week, a couple of days up to a week. And then I retreat and put aside everything I'm doing. It's a writing retreat for me at that time. Be comfortable with your writing. Get all your writing stuff and retreat. Get a good rest. Be happy. Be energized. This is the kill time. You are coming to put down a document. Minimize the usage of cell phones and stay focused. If you are writing and at some point you feel uncomfortable, that should tell you that there is something possibly out. You are not comfortable with the materials that you have, or you are not comfortable with, you are just not comfortable. You are not sure of what you are writing. You are not sure of your storytelling process. We all have levels of discomfort, right? But when you are very sure that you have the research gaps, you have good research objectives, your figures and tables, your analysis and everything, you have everything in your head. You know where you are going to with this story, right? So that gives you a level of comfort. It keeps you happy. When you are writing and you are happy, it means you are on the right path. If you are not happy and you are not comfortable, you write for 10 minutes and then you get up, you go take a walk, take some snack, come back, write for 20 minutes, and it's not going well. It should tell you. That's a warning sign that something is not done right. You need to go back and get comfortable with things that are not strong in your mind. So you are ready to write. And then how do we go about writing? We have various sections of the writing. I go with the method section. I prefer starting with the method section. Method is method. You have done all the lab work. You have done all the field work, right? It's in your mind. You know what you did. So describe your method. It's very simple to write. Describe your location, your field and lab protocols, model setups, data mining and analysis procedures, your functions and equations, etc. So you define all of that. You describe it in simple terms, okay? Your methods must be reproducible. You must be able, any person reading your work worldwide should be able to reproduce your work. A method is akin to a recipe. It's like a recipe, right? If you want to prepare jollof rice, you have a way to prepare jollof rice. This, you prepare the stew, you do this. Anybody worldwide should be able to follow your recipe and come up with the same results, right? A lot of times we see methods in manuscripts that have been submitted for review, and you don't even know what the person is doing. Like, you read the methods and everything is all over the map. You can't follow any sequential steps. You don't see any sequence. You don't really understand what is going on. You want to avoid all of this. Cite appropriately. You have to give credit where credit is due. You cite your sources as you write this method section. Any work that is not yours, you cite it. So the method section is done. The next section I usually go to is the result section. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'll just go through the introduction, and we go step by step and see what we have to pay attention to in those sections. So let me go to introduction. So we know the introduction. You start the introduction, all the literature you had read prior to this point. You remember some of them, you revise some of them, or you revisit some of them. And then that informs your introduction, right? In this step, one key thing you shouldn't forget about, your objectives for the work must clearly come out in the last paragraph of this section. Your objectives must clearly be stated. That is the most important thing in the introduction section. You can write all your stories, blah, 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 blah. But if your objective is not clearly stated somewhere, especially at the within the last paragraph of your introduction section, then you are missing something. Let's take an example from our review paper we just saw. Look at the objective of this paper. Our goal in presenting this material is to encourage widespread use of transit time information in process studies to provide new insights to catchment function and to inform the structural development and testing of hydrologic models. That is neat. Very well written. Straight to the point, objective of the work. It should be captured in the last paragraph of your introduction. Also try to let your writing be linked. Writing should be linked. Your sentences and paragraphs, we call it should have a flow. It has to flow, right? I always go back to this jollof example. Don't be talking about cooking jollof and then go to talking about what is in the freezer. These are two different things. The brain works in a certain way. It anticipates what is going to happen next. So when you are writing, let your writing flow. It has to have a link. Let me take this example of a manuscript that was submitted for review. At some point in the introduction, the authors were writing, and I read, however, serious groundwater over abstraction has brought a series of environmental and ecological problems to Beijing, such as the continuous decline of groundwater levels, the expansion of landing funnels, and the subsidence of ground surface. Cool. Look at the next paragraph. Numerical modeling has already been deemed as an effective and important method in the study of groundwater flow and its sustainable management. These are two different things. Look at the two paragraphs. The last sentence in the last paragraph, and the first sentence in the next paragraph. They don't link. The next paragraph should be covering things that are related to, you were talking about groundwater decline. You were talking about expansion of landing funnel and ground surface subsidence, right? So anybody reading this in the next paragraph is expecting you to talk about one of these three things you had mentioned in the prior paragraph, in the last sentence. So this is what you want to avoid. You don't want to be cooking your jollof and everything is in the kitchen. We pour our oil into the cooking pan. We add some onions, and then we are stirring. And then you pause at that point. You are describing the recipe for preparing the jollof. And then you pause at that point. And then now you go, your next sentence is, oh, we open the fridge, and then there is an orange juice there. And what has orange juice in the fridge got to do with what? The jollof. You see the link there. The orange juice comes at the tail end of the dining table when everything is set and we are serving our food with orange juice. That is how the brain works. So let your sentences have links. They should have a flow so that the brain can comfortably follow. We are done with introduction. We have our methods already written. We have our results. This is the point where what I mentioned previously, where you move every figure and table to Word, and then you write this little descriptive notes. This is where you leverage on those concept notes to complete this section. So it goes very quickly. When I'm writing these sections, I go very, very quickly because I've done that work prior to this the writing stage, right? So let's look at some key things to take note of in this section. Your figures and tables should be listed and they should be arranged in order in which they were first mentioned in this section. Very, very important information. You can't talk about figure 2 before talking about figure 1. Don't start talking about figure 2 before figure 1. When figure 1 comes, you talk about it first. Figure 2, you talk about figure 2. You don't go talking about figure 2 before figure 1. Very important. You also have to write, what do your results reveal about the system you are studying? What does the results reveal about the system you are studying? You have to write details about what your system or your results, your data analysis, the figures and tables, what they are telling about the system you are studying. This is where you leverage on your concept notes to complete that section. So it moves very quickly when you have done it proud in the past. So we have our results section completed. Now we come to our discussion. Discussion, we have to compare and contrast with other systems. You have to be elaborate. You have read a lot. You know what is happening. You have it in your brain. What are the similarities? What are the differences? These are things you have to talk about. Provide sound scientific reasons for observed patterns and behaviors. Be detailed in your descriptions. Be detailed in what you are talking about. Your reasons should be scientifically sounded. Where you are not sure about certain patterns, it is best to hypothesize. You have to state what you think. You are not sure what this is, but you have to hypothesize what is going on. This is an example. Low uncertainties and good intertracer agreement was also present at Miami in spring and summer. Next sentence. However, no plausible mechanism was found to explain why delta deuterium-based uncertainties were generally lower than delta 18-based uncertainties in Miami. This is not the best. No plausible mechanism was found. That's not the best. You have to hypothesize. I wrote this some years back and it passed, probably because other sections were too strong for people to ignore. So this was not really evident. But when I read this part, I know why. Now maybe probably I've matured a bit in my thinking, but you should give propose some hypotheses about things you can't explain, your data cannot explain. That is a good way to go about this section when you are not sure about certain things, right? Hypothesis is just a hypothesis. It could be true or it could be false. So don't leave things unexplained. Hypothesize. And also avoid anecdotes. Avoid saying things that are not captured in your data. Avoid conjectures. This is just a conjecture. It's not captured in your data. Avoid it at all costs. For example, the sun sets at 6:15 in Windhoek. If your data doesn't capture it anywhere in the paper, that's an anecdote. Nothing in your data shows that this is true. Even if it is true, in this document you are presenting, nothing really shows that it is true. So avoid anecdotes when you are writing the discussion section. And now, of course, the conclusion. We come to the conclusion. The conclusion is the conclusion. Be brief and be concise. Use conceptual models to summarize your outcomes as much as possible. This is a nice conceptual model that captures the results of a paper that was published some years back. Very simple, everything is there. Somebody can just look at the conceptual model and then understand the conclusion. Don't be writing and going all over the map and you are writing a lot in your conclusion. You want to avoid that as much as possible. You can also list your outcomes. Just list them one after the other. And that's what is your conclusion. Your paper is done. It's that simple. At this point, don't forget your reference list is in the EndNote web. It's saved already in the web, right? You just pull it out and everything is there. You put it in your references and you are done. I'll use the next 2 slides or so to come to address something important. We all have levels of writing. Writing is an art. And I'll take a minute or two as I bring this presentation to an end to see how we can write a bit more at a higher level. Can we move our writing to another level? Is it possible? And I think it is. Writing is an act and is learned. You see, writing is very important. Whether you're an engineer, whether you're a scientist, journalist, we are writing every time. I always say, as an engineer, if you go on the field, you do all of these things, and you can't capture what you did in a meaningful writing, then something is lost. People cannot understand what you've written, right? So writing is very important. And in scientific writing, there are some people who write. We read articles and you can see that this writing is at a very high level. This writing, these words that these guys are using is at a very high level. We can also write when we prepare ourselves. So how do we write? I call it mature writing at a very high level. Let's look at some examples and I'll share with you what I did when I was in grad school to be able to write at that level. And I can assure you that writing at that level is going to give you respect. When people take your manuscript and they are reviewing it, they don't see you as a student. They don't see you just as a student. Even though at that level, you are a student, they see your writing is matured. Your choice of words are all solid, and that puts you in that group with those professors, right? So we'll go through, I'll show you some examples, and then I'll give you some tips as to how to improve your writing. Let's look at a couple of examples and I'll read them. Then he threw sand, a wrench, an entire toolbox into the gears of his party's efforts to pass a temporary spending bill to keep the government open past Friday night. Nicely written. You can see the words. These are things that don't come to our minds when we write every day, right? Let's look at the next example. This begs the question of what limits the observed data places on the allowable complexity of rainfall runoff models. Good writing, solid, matured. Let's look at another example. How are these observations to be reconciled with the contention that only a model with a few parameters can be supported by rainfall runoff data? 4, take it with a grain of salt or take it with a pinch of salt. When you are writing, if you are not a literature person, does this come to your mind? If you write it this way, it's better than don't take it serious, like writing it in plain language, right? It's an art, right? Let's look at the 5th example. Thus, the distribution characterizes the spatially integrated hydrologic kinematics of a system and encapsulates the transport controls on conservative solute dynamics and first-order reactions. Can you see how solid this is? This is not something you can just get up and write in a normal day. This is learned, right? This is solid. This has a lot of heavy words, heavy phrases, all in this sentence. The last one. They thus encapsulate the integral effect of dispersion mechanism driven solute transport within a hydrologic control volume and explicitly regulate the composition of out fluxes. Can I write this, getting up and say I'm writing, and it comes out of my mind easily? The answer is no. We can't write this way. It's not that easy. I'm not saying we can't. Some of us can, but at some level you can't. These words don't come to your mind that easily, right? So let's see the suggestion here. What do you do to be able to write at this level? Every sentence is solid, it's matured, it's at that level, that golden level you want your writing to be at. How do I do it? I create a Word document. And what? I copy and paste in that document any phrase or sentence I find whilst I'm reading an article or a book. So when I'm reading an article or a book online, and I see phrases like that, I just copy them and paste them in Word. So I have that document there. So I said, oh, I like how this thing is nicely summarized. I like how this phrase is coined. So I copy and paste it in Word. So I keep adding to it and I number them that way. So they are in that Word document. And then every day, and please every day, first thing in the morning or last thing before bed, you read over all of these phrases or sentences. Read all of them. You'll see that over time, the phrases will occupy many pages of the Word document, right? So your reading time is going to increase. It may take you 1 hour to read all of those phrases. You just keep reading them. You are reading them every day, morning or evening. You have to sacrifice some time for that. When I was in grad school, I left Facebook. I left Facebook altogether. I just suspended my Facebook account because I realized you wake up in the morning and you see all these alerts, and then you have to read all of it. It takes your time. Facebook is going to take probably, and I don't mean just Facebook, social media is going to take probably 45 minutes to an hour of your time each day. I mean, you have this 4 years. Why not sacrifice a bit of that time and cut down on social media? I'm not saying social media is not good, but you cut down on social media use and sacrifice, make that sacrifice and improve something, add something valuable to your life. That's personally what I did. So I kept adding to this document. And whenever you write, because you've seen these words over and over and over again, when you are writing, these phrases and words, they come to you naturally because you have read them and seen them over and over and over and over again. Every day you've read them for many months. You've read them. Every day you have seen them. So when you are writing, these phrases come to you. They come to you. They are a combination of it and all of it, and you are putting it all together. They come to you. It wouldn't be exactly what you copied and pasted. I can bet you. When you are writing, when you read these phrases over and over again, when you are writing and you write them, yours may even be better than what you had read. It doesn't have to exactly be what you read. No. So I'll bring my presentation to an end. If you have any question, I'll yield back to Joe. And I thank you all for listening to me. And I'll end my presentation here. This is my contact. If you have any questions, I'll be ready to take your questions. So thank you very much, and I'll hand over to Joe. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Doc, for this different perspective. It's very, very different from what I do, a lot of things. And I've learned a lot on how to write a matured writing, right? Because a lot of time we really struggle. And I think most of us here, English is not our first language. And that's one of the struggle that comes in. So it's really advisable to follow some of these practices so that we can improve our writing. I would love to open the floor for questions and any additions. Or everything is clear like water. Yes, Marcus.
Thank you, Doc, for the presentation. I have just one question. Maybe how do one go about, especially when you are writing in a manuscript for a literature review, whereby you are just reviewing what is on the ground, and not necessarily a manuscript for data collected. We've got about draft a manuscript for a literature review section. Especially when it comes to the outline of that manuscript, it's quite a bit of a challenge. So how do one organize such a manuscript?
Okay. I don't
Are
know.
you talking? Is it a technical paper you mean?
Yes.
So say for instance, I think you have, let me just elaborate on the question. You have a national database, say for instance, and then you get some of the data from the national database, and also you just want to review the methods, but you are including maybe data set from you haven't collected this data in the field, you have collected it maybe in such. How he's asking now, what is the structure that you must follow when you write the manuscript? Is it like the normal structure of a manuscript? And if it's so, what do you put in the literature review section? Because this is already like you are reviewing literature, because you are using data that are there in the different databases that are already existing. Is that your question, Marcus?
Yes, Doc. Especially when you are reviewing paper just to get one, what is on the ground, especially maybe in the area of where you are studying, to establish the facts that's on the ground before that will inform then your data collection and going forward. So getting various articles has been done, getting data from already published articles, and putting them in a way that should be understandable to the next person, that okay, this is what is on the ground, and from there you'll be able to have a better picture of what are your data process will look like going forward. So how do you write an article in that of such kind, especially when you are dealing with already published data, or already let me say historical data, for instance, actually. So how do you structure that manuscript? Because there is already a literature review, it is natural.
Oh, okay. That's quite, this comes to, you are talking about data mining here, right? The data already exists. So I think this has all you are looking at is, let's say, a global pattern here, because the data, either a location-based novelty, because if the data is coming from, let's say, an example, just a particular watershed, right? In an area. So this firm has a lot of data on it or published materials, and then you take the data from those published materials to do your analysis. That is location-based novelty, but the key is going to come from the aggregation. You get what I mean? When it comes to the discussion session, I think you follow it the same way. That's how I approach it. I don't know what others would say. Some would say they want to just have a technical paper. But if you want it to be an article where you have the introduction, you have the methods and all of that, the methods are going to cover what you did, your data mining process, right? What did you do to capture? There's nothing wrong with it. What did you do to capture the data you use for the project? So you did data mining. You have to clearly write it in your method section. And then where you got your sources from, you cite all of it. The introduction is the introduction. You know the story you are telling in the introduction, right? You think the data has not well been aggregated. We haven't well aggregated our data. So we have to we want to know the patterns have not been clearly captured fully. So that is mentioned in your introduction. That is your core objective of the work, right? That's your core objective of the work, integration or aggregation of results. And then when you come to your methods, you mention your data mining method, how you got your data and what you analyzed. And then now you come to the results that you obtained, and then the discussion, and it follows from there. It's the same thing, but you have to, it's the same thing, the same process, but you have to capture what you did in your data mining process clearly and cite your sources. And your introduction should be in the context of aggregation. You want to aggregate the results from all these works that have been done. So Marcus, you get what I mean?
Yes, I got it, Doc.
All right, thank you. So I will before I give the floor to the next person, I wanted to add to say, one, when you are explaining also in that review paper, how did you obtain certain data? Say for instance, you are using maybe Google Scholar, you are using whatever. What is it called? What are they called again? What is the not website, but like there's a term that it's where you are hosting these different data. So you need to find a reason why are you only using maybe Google Scholar and then you are using Elsevier if you are looking online, and in comparison to looking at maybe you are looking at Terra and Francis, like the different publishers that are existing. So you just have to have good motivation on where do you get the data? What was your base on determining the type of data that you have extracted, so that it does not come that you are subjected to only some without a very good reason why you only chose those database. Yes, database is the word I was looking for. Why only you chose those specific database comparing to the other ones? Yes, there was somebody wanted to say something.
Let me see. Chair, through you,
Yes.
Chair.
Yes.
Can I say something? Yeah. If I joined a bit late, but when I listened to what was said, is to say This is what we call meta-analysis. If you are doing a meta-analysis where you are reviewing existing literatures or secondary data, one of the steps I think Dr. Toko have just pointed out to say what database are you supposed to use, but then you need to set criteria to say what are some of the maybe, how do I say, the year now, to say maybe papers from this year to this year, then you just draw a criteria as you are extracting these papers from the various databases, so that we don't find ourselves referencing old material. So which means when you are writing this, you need to set a criteria. Maybe that's maybe the right way to use to when you are using what we call meta-analysis, or based on what existing literatures. So if you do not set that criteria in terms of what to use, then you find yourself in a situation where whatever that you find, you may use it. But if you set criteria to say this is, I would only use material from this from this source, from this period to this period, that would help you to be able to ensure that you doing what we call meta-analysis. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Doc. We have lost the host, or
I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. My battery went down. My laptop went down. So the presentation is not going to be showing on the screen.
Oh,
but I'm still
okay.
here. Yeah, I'm on my phone now.
All right. So
Yeah.
next question. I think we have digested one from Marcus. Yes, Edward.
And I just want to add a bit that what Marcus is talking about, the method or the approach that Marcus is using, if he's using it, is very important. You know, people, it costs a lot of money to do field and lab work, right? And we get the same data. Now we have a unifying, we're trying to unify results, right? Look at global patterns. So those who do data mining, where they take data, secondary data from published materials and other sources to kind of compare what systems are doing globally so that we can compare and contrast, is very important. So if that's what he's doing, he should be rest assured that that is one thing that a lot of what scientists are looking for. They just want to look at how things are changing globally and how things are evolving. So I will encourage him to keep going. He's on the right path. It's a very unique technique, and people are really, really hot accommodating that approach.
Yes, thank you. Edward.
Hi, Chair.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. And hi, Sam, it's been a while.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ed, that's you.
Yes. Yeah, so yeah, that was a very impressive presentation, very insightful. I learned a lot. I think regarding the question, what I will add to all the contribution is I mean, going back to what you said, you have to first off consume a lot of literature to be sure that the meta-analysis that you want to do or the summary that you want to do will actually be novel. It will be adding something to the science. And then, and so basically that also helps you to define your context as to what kind of literature you want to focus on to get data from that, to synthesize and then make some contribution to the field. So again, even if it's a local problem that you think you want to solve, because you finally will send that findings to be published in a peer-reviewed journal, you have to see how that local problem applies globally. And that, again, sets you on the kind of literature you'll be searching for, what you should be looking for as your boundaries in kind of getting those literature to do the work. So it's all about how much knowledge you have. That is what is going to put you at the forefront of the science to identify what kind of questions will be needed to address to move the science forward. So that's I think that's what I will just repeat what Dr. Bansah has said, that you have to consume a lot of literature, reading the current papers that are published, and then also going back to the first papers that have been published, because in most cases, we are just going around the first assumptions that were made in the field. And in some cases, nothing new has been added. But if you can look at what has been published in the recent papers, and then go back to the first time, maybe when that particular idea was raised, so that you can understand the fundamental assumptions that underpins that particular idea. And then, so you kind of have an idea how far we have come. That will also help you to define your problem and get something out which will be novel in character. So I think that would be my contribution in that regard.
Thank you, Edward. There's a question on the chat, which says, thank you, Doc. Can you also please clarify on the part of hypothesizing in the discussion section when findings are not so clear? How do we do this? This is from Dapewa.
Okay. So hypothesis is simply what you are not sure of this. For instance, the example I showed, let's just take the example I showed in the slide. There were two traces, right? Delta deuterium and then delta oxygen, right? So we had the deuterium and the oxygen traces. They were both forming patterns. But in that writing, it was stated that there was no plausible reason to state why delta deuterium tracer patterns are higher than this. The way it's written, it was written that way because nothing actually supported. You can't say, you can give a reason. Maybe evaporation made the deuterium concentrations higher than the oxygen, right? Maybe we know. Maybe in your mind, you know, okay, there could be fractionation. There could be this, there could be that. I'm just using that as an example. Or something else. But in the context of your data that you are presenting in your article, nothing actually showed. And if you remember, I also talked about avoiding anecdotes. So when a thing is not captured in what you are presenting, the data that you are presenting, and you say it, reviewers who pick on it. So in that sense, you have to hypothesize. You get what I mean? You are saying evaporation, if I had said at that point that evaporation appears to the writing alone, evaporation appears to, or high temperature appears to make the deuterium concentrations higher than, then that appear alone is a hypothesis. You are thinking that is what it is. You are not saying definitively that is temperature that is creating that effect, right? So that's what hypothesis means, so that you don't leave things that are there, but you can't explain. Does that answer your question? That's what I mean by hypothesis. You have to put it out there that it appears, like words, using words like it appears. So if you use words like it appears and it's not even captured in your data, then nobody is going to pick on that. Yeah.
All right, thank you. She said it's clear now. Any other question? Oh, okay. So it's clear like water.
Doc?
Oh, okay, yes, Ashley.
No, for me, it's some sort of clarity that I need to get. There at figures, when he said we need to have descriptive notes before we write. Now, from the example that he has given, that figure had a very long title. I mean, figure caption. In the end, after writing, do you still leave it that way, or the notes were just for you to be then able to write your results section?
Correct. So the notes that you wrote previously, you see when you're doing your data analysis and you start polishing your figures in those subsidiary softwares, at that point, everything is fresh in your mind, right? You have done your literature, you read a lot of literature. So the gaps are clear in your mind, your patterns are showing. So you are writing all those notes. It's not those exact notes that you copy and paste into the results section, but you are going to pick from there. You are now writing a story in the actual manuscript. So a lot of your ideas, all those little descriptive notes that you write under each of the figures, they are the things that you are going to rely on to write your the results section. So they are not just copy and paste there, no. But you are going to revise and add, but it's going to be more of a guide in writing that, if that answers your question.
I think it does, but the figure caption, do we still leave it as long as it appeared in that figure, for instance?
Correct. Your figure captions are your figure captions. When you're doing your figures, you're polishing them and writing those detailed captions. I think more or less they stay that way because figure caption is figure caption, right? The point I was making in the presentation was that don't let your figure captions be ambiguous. Don't just write 1 or 2 sentences. At times you see some manuscripts submitted and you see map of the study area. What is map of the study area? You don't want things like that. Map, you have to describe what is in that map. The study area, the study is located at this point. It is a semi-humid, blah, 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 blah. You keep going, a heterogeneous system. So you have all those detailed 4 or 5 sentences. So that's what I mean in the figure and table captions. They shouldn't just be something, input, output, something. You see a lot of people writing that way and they just bring it for review and you don't know. They have a lot more in the figure than the caption is describing, and that's what you want to avoid. So to come back to your question, what you write in your figure descriptions or your table descriptions, they more or less stay that way in the manuscript. If there's any revision at all, it will be minor because now you are writing, right? Your ideas may have evolved, but it will mostly be centered around that.
Okay. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. I had an experience with this figure caption In my PhD dissertation, I got one of the examiner was saying the figure captions, some of them are too short, and then one was saying the figure captions are too long. So it was really one of those comments that I was not. It was not easy to deal with, and I think as long as you don't really leave your readers hanging, this is what he's saying, to just say, study area map. At least say something that this is a location. What is it that you are showing in the study area? Should be coming out clear enough, or instead of just waiting for me to imply from looking at the figure. All right, do we have any other question? Or should I just summarize? Yeah, we are almost running out of time. So if I am to summarize, I think writing is an art, as Sam has said, and it's an art. The good thing with it is an art that you can learn. A lot of time with arts, if you don't know how to draw, you just don't know how to draw. But with writing, it's a good thing because it's a type of art that you can learn, and you learn by reading more of things that you want to write. If you want to be writing newspaper articles, you need to read more newspaper articles. If you want to write more scientific papers, you need to read more scientific papers so that you get the style. And now with this new technique I've learned to have a Word document, and you copy all your favorite sentences so that you revise them and they become so normal to you that it's not even gonna read like, why is reading a scientific paper so difficult? So it improves with time. But I can guarantee you that you can publish a lot of papers, but every time when you write, it still comes with a new experience. You might pick up something new, a new technique, and you must just learn to enjoy the process and acknowledge everything that you learn through the process, and just be happy with it. Don't be stressed to say, no, I need to do this, I didn't do that, and try and enjoy the process. And for those that are studying, if you are really struggling with time, there are people who recommend that at least write a 2 sentence on your work, on your paper, on whatever. But there are also people who recommend to say, set aside time. Really try to find what is it that will work for your schedule, but setting aside time really helps you a lot because you focus. And that's why it's also advisable to do that description of figures whenever you do the figure. So for instance, if you are working, maybe you set in the morning hours are much more better because your mind is still fresh. You focus on your schoolwork, and then you do the rest in the evening. Also, the other in the afternoon or after lunch. And if you do even just one figure in a day and you write a description about that figure, because one of the struggle is having figures and coming later. Because when when you plot something, you get all this idea, you are able to observe the difference between this figure. Oh, why is this not there? And sometimes you might change things and change what. If you leave it for a week, you will forget that it was you who has changed because there was one outlier, and maybe you removed that outlier, or you have that one, you don't even remember which one is the outlier. That's why it's recommended that you do this detailed description of figure as soon as you plot the figure. And be concise. It's a manuscript, it's a paper, it's not a textbook. So be straight to the point. And then start with things that you already know, like your methodology. Start, because you have done the methods, you have collected the data, you have processed the data. So why not describe as what you have already done? And also really put whatever step you do, try to document it some way. I think this is what I failed during my year as a student. is to document the different process, whatever step, document, because there are times where you find things, you don't know where you took this, what. So if you are studying, have a deck book where you write, hand manually written, have a Word document also where you paste things. If you are writing manually, handwritten, you have a book. If you are putting on a Word, so you have both of those two documents, and it will help you greatly with your writing. And just enjoy the process. We have all started somewhere, and the more you do it, the better you become. And I want to thank this opportunity to thank Dr. Bansah for sharing his perspective. And I like the fact that he put a disclaimer to say, this is my perspective. There are a lot of different ways of people will tell you, but you have to find what works for you. Which time is best for you to write? Is it midnight? Is it in the morning, and whatever? So thank you very much for this session, Sam, and we look forward to having more session of this nature. If anybody is interested in sharing, even just sharing your challenges or your first manuscript or whatever, with the audience of Research Corner, please get in touch with the email address of Research Corner of Dr. Josie, and then we will take it from there. So thank you very much. And maybe if you have any last word, Sam?
Not really, but I just want to encourage everybody listening to us that you are not alone. Writing brings a lot of discomfort. Is something that you can improve. So if you are feeling or having any difficulty in your research, don't think you are alone. Don't just sit down. Reach out. Just a little trick here and there, a little encouragement. And that is why it's very important to form very strong group of like-minded people, right? Reach out, and that is going to improve. You know you are not in a place all by your own. So it's going to get well. Basically, don't quit your grad school. It is your work, and I want to encourage you. There will come to a point where you feel like, oh, this is too much. I want to go. This is not for me. Please, it is for you. Graduate school is about, do you want it or you don't want it? It's not so much about brilliance or whatever. It's about you. It's in your mind. Your advisor is not going to save you from this. You are aiming at something. You have to encourage yourself and tell yourself, no, I can do this. Every day, no, I can do this. Don't quit. None of you should quit. It's going to get well. And that's all I want to encourage you with. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And have a blessed evening, everyone, and a good day to those that are in daytime. What time is it now? Is it around 11 or so?
It's 11:30.
Yeah, so have a good day ahead, and good night to colleagues in Africa.
Thank you.
Mhm.